Adam, we have some exciting updates here, and I'm definitely struggling with some bad news just in the world, just all the bad news that keeps coming in. And you were saying you've got some good news to share. So let's get into that. But first, I want to make sure that we touch base on follow up on last week's conversation.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about grassroots and activism and where is that taking us, and we're looking at making a change culturally, right? That's ultimately
Yeah.
that's what we want to do, is make a change culturally. And our little target right now is getting an agriculture category on Substack. Adam, you started it. You are the original grassroots that started this whole idea and promotion and movement, so to speak. So give us a short little update on all
Yeah.
the enthusiasm for that.
Yeah. There seems to be a lot. I've been busy getting ready to farm the past week, so I haven't had hardly any time on Substack at all. So I really haven't followed. But every time I open it now, my feed is all agriculture, and it's all other people pushing for a category, pushing to get our space. So that's really cool to see. It's awesome to have both farmers and non-farmers alike just really pushing for this because it matters. It does. Where our
It
food
really
comes
does.
from matters. And at first, yeah, at first I was probably just trying to get seen as a writer. I'm not gonna lie. But then the more I dug into it, and then the farther we go on this thing, the more important I realize it actually is. So, not to say that I didn't think it was important to begin with, but I think my reason for doing this has evolved. I guess if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Hey,
Uh,
Adam, I just want to give a real quick shout out to somebody who just joined,
sure.
Brett Scott. He's an economist I follow. Really
Oh
great
yeah.
content. And we shared a lot of comments and a lot of ideas around well, for me, how I express it is the idea of living capital, which is farming in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
So wanted to just comment on that real quick and say, hey, Brett, great to have you
Hi,
on
Brett.
here. Um, and Adam, you're talking about something really important, which is literally why you say you started farming, and what we're going to talk about in this podcast, which is weeds versus crops. And it's that connection piece, being able to
Yeah.
find each other, being able to say, hey, I'm doing what you're doing, or I support what you're doing, right? I
Right.
support it.
Yeah.
And
I see
ultimately,
you.
like, in thinking about what we were talking about today, I kept going over and over and over, kept coming back to, we get more of what we support.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um. Yeah. You're exactly right. Sorry, I said I'd be a better thinker while I was driving and moving. My brain works better that way, but it is still early, so forgive me. But yeah, the more you support it, the more you get out, and you can see that as it's grown. I mean, our petition is up to 225, I think, last night when I checked, or close to it. I mean, in the in the grand scheme of Substack, that's pretty small, but that's to me, that's a lot. That's a lot of people, from starting out from just me complaining that we don't have a place on Substack to this. It makes me wonder how far can it go, Like,
Absolutely.
where can we take it? It feels good. It feels like a real movement is building, forming.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
thinking about the topic we covered last week, which was grassroots activism versus astroturf, that was we talked about it in depth last week, so I will link to that. But just real quickly on that, today's topic, weeds versus crops, one of the things that occurred to me is that for some of us, okay, so a weed is a plant someplace that we don't want it.
Right.
That's it, right? Someplace we don't want
Hmm.
it. And often grass can be that plant because it just crawls
Yeah.
underneath and goes under a fence. It has no boundaries. No
Yeah.
boundaries.
A lot of people don't think this, but even something like corn can be a weed. If I have
Yeah.
a crop of soybeans out here, if there's volunteer corn out there, that corn is a weed. And it's anything that's essentially, I guess in my case, robbing yield or I guess that's the biggest thing that we look at. Also cosmetic, ugly. It looks terrible, but yeah,
And in some ways, like I can imagine that we might be the weeds, our grassroots efforts are the weeds for somebody else's agenda.
absolutely. Yeah.
And they are
Hmm.
trying to get rid of us at the same time that we're trying to stay strong and keep growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kept coming around to things like that. And how do we fit into this bigger picture?
Well, we fit in a lot more than people realize. We're going to. I'll get to that. But what's got you down? What's got the state of the world? What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's tough to articulate, I think. So bear with me here as I try to sort through this and share what comes to mind for you. But it's this time of year. This is spring, which is a fantastic time of year for farmers and gardeners and everything because there's so much going on, right? And the earth is waking up again, and plants and flowers are blooming, animals are procreating. There's so many little wonderful little baby faces, and we're getting a lot of them on Substack with cattle culture sharing the calves being born,
Yeah.
and Samantha with the baby lambs, and Helen with the piglet. So it's a time of so much joy. And I also feel this duality with this grief that the world is in the state that it's in. And one of the things, a microcosm of that, Adam, is in my area. Uh, I don't know how to describe this even, and I don't know if anybody else is experiencing this, but I'm seeing more trash, more litter, and other types of trash than ever before. And I grew up in the
Yeah.
80s, right? So we're not strangers to like piles of tires in streams,
Sure. Yeah.
and yet it's worse than that. What I'm seeing is worse than that, and I don't know if anybody else is experiencing this, but I'm feeling this like where I want to share this joy because the earth is waking up and the flowers are blooming, and like what could be more precious than flowers and baby calves and lambs? And there's so much to express in that gratitude and that joy. And yet there's this grief, this intense grief over what we've allowed to happen.
Yeah. I get that. It's hard to. Yeah, it's hard to stomach that, especially like you said, spring. This is like a time of rebirth. Things are well. Eventually, they're going to start to green up here. We get about 2 months of summer far north as I am. But yeah, I hadn't thought of it, but I guess I see that a lot too. The snow thaws and the wind blows, and it's even out here. There's a lot of trash. People just chuck shit out the windows and don't think anything of it. It's kind of a metaphor for our whole society, a throwaway society. Sad to say.
I think that's what it is for me. It's a microcosm of the extractive nature of things and how flippant we are about our
Yeah,
environment and about getting close to nature and about each other, right? That's
yeah,
a lot of it because if social commentary aside, I will zip it. I will not make the comment. Um, but if some people can put their sofas on the side of the road just to be picked up by other people, like we're not caring for or caring about each other. And that is in and of itself something to grieve over, right? And like I understand this is a microcosm, and I'm probably not articulating it very well, but it's also like this duality inside of me where there's this incredible celebration of life, especially during spring, and yet the we cannot ignore the realities around us.
yeah, yeah. You're right. I was thinking about this last night. I think we're actually it's that angst, right? That kind of goes back to things you can't change, but I made some notes. But I was thinking about how people are just tired of like fake everything, like Instagram, fake food, dopamine loops, everything's fake. And younger people I always go back to younger people and how I see this interest about getting back to the earth, connected to the earth. And I think it starts with young people. Like they're tired, they've been raised in an era of cell phones and sitting by themselves and just total disconnection, right? And I think it's human nature to crave something real, something tangible that you can touch, that you can feel. And I think it starts with food. And I always talk about all these people that the one guy that handed me a book about soil, like there's a real appetite for this now. And I think that's where we're headed is farming's going to be cool again, I think. And I don't mean cool in like the farm influencer, millennial farmer YouTube channel with big machinery and things like that. I think actual hands in the dirt. Remember victory gardens? Well, I don't remember them, but you've heard of victory gardens in World War One and then especially World War II when they became popular. People were encouraged to grow their own food, take some pressure off the food system so the soldiers could eat, right? I think we're going back to that. And I think it also ties in to what I mentioned about the fourth turning, Neil Howe. And we're in this,
Yeah.
Neil Howe talks about how generations go through these shifts, but they repeat patterns. And we're in the crisis phase of that pattern right now. I don't know how far into it. Hopefully we're near the end of it, but usually they end in war. But I'm going to be hopeful today and say it doesn't end in war. Maybe it ends in growing something where we all, like I said, small farming could be cool again. And I think if young people if somebody showed them a way to do it, I think a lot more people would do it. It would catch on and it will be more popular. I really do believe that. Like, I know I've said a lot that commercial farming, big farmers will probably grow from this crisis. They'll probably absorb the small people that can't make it. But this is kind of a different farming that I'm talking about, something that everybody can do. They just need somebody to show them the way how to do it. And I think that's what we're headed back towards more real things, making real things, growing real things. And I think young people are going to make it cool, which brings me to my point. I think this is what Substack is missing. This is a huge opportunity for them, and they could be on the front end of it, both monetarily and just, well, whatever. They could be on the front of it. And I think that's what they're missing. It's just not, I don't know. Farming is evolving, and I think they're missing that. They really are. I think a lot of people are missing that, but I think it's coming. I really do. That was
I
a
hear
lot.
you. I hear you.
Yeah.
Can I offer just a slight shift and a rebrand?
Sure.
So the victory gardens of the wars were that was last week we talked about propaganda, and I actually read from the book
Yeah.
Propaganda. This is not just a word designed to trigger people, it's an actual strategy of communication.
Yeah.
And the book was written by Edward Bernays, published in 1928. Many have used these techniques and tactics to promote specific things throughout the years, including the idea of the victory garden. And look, I'm with you. Like those gardens were amazing and essential. And the point was, let's have victory in the war. And
Right.
so I would offer just a slight shift and say, let's not have another war. let's
Right. Right.
let's create peace gardens,
Yeah. Absolutely.
because one of the things that I think the crisis that, by the way, I got the book out, so I've started it. I have not
Yeah.
gotten very far in it, to be honest, but the fourth turning, I've started it. I'm gonna be up on that pretty soon, Adam, so we can have an intelligent conversation about it.
Sure.
But I think part of what that grief is that I was talking about a few minutes ago is this feeling of doom that so many people have.
Yeah.
The world is crashing around us. There's instability. It's scary. And yet we have this hope and we have this joy, and we can touch the earth and be connected to it. And so the reframe, I think of it as a peace garden to help cultivate that joy a little bit more, cultivate well, for lack of a better term, cultivate that peace. And I'm, I'm using that word in an all-encompassing kind of way, but um I understand realities. Like, I don't think that we're going to forever live in a peaceful world, but I think that we can get more of it if we support it. Just like we're talking
Absolutely.
about, like, you get more
Yeah.
of what you support. If you
Right.
want more peace, find a way to be peaceful.
Right. Yeah. Huh. I love that.
So peace
And
garden.
yeah, it's that gloom you feel. That's something I felt basically my whole adult life. Like, and I think a lot of people my age feel this too. Like it's just been this eternal struggle. We face rising prices with everything. I mean, wages have been stagnant since 1970, since before I was born. We don't have this big economic tailwind that our parents and their parents had, and it's what I've been feeling for 20 years, and I know a lot of other people are feeling it, and you can see it in society. There's unrest, and I think we're reaching the end of it now because we've lost trust is gone in basically all institutions now, everywhere. I mean, we're gutting everything. Department of Education gone, USDA slash. I mean, any institution now, the media is the most untrusted thing out there. And I think it all has to do with that, this struggle that we've been going through that nobody's, well, not many people have been able to put a name on it or an exact cause, and I can't either, but it feels like it's finally coming to a head. And I think that's what leads to this transformation that I'm talking about. I think we're in it, like it's just hard to see when you're in it because it feels like it moves so slow, but it's moving.
Yeah, I hear you. And
Yeah.
and also, like, circling back to the connection piece of it, which is, and you were saying we need somebody to teach the younger generation about gardening and the connection to the food. And I think we have that, to be fair, right? We've got amazing gardening writers on Substack
A ton
and
of them.
in
Yeah. It's
our
all
in
here.
our sphere right now. And
Yeah.
you're teaching about some of the soil health things and some of the realities of what it's like in this industry of conventional farming. And I talk about gardening and permaculture and food sourcing locally. So there's a lot of amazing teachers. It's about connection. And it's also that
Yeah.
reality you're talking about. It's like a human being, we can tell the difference between the astroturf and real grass.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so as soon as people get started and make that first connection and get their hands dirty and begin to understand, the reality shifts.
Yeah. It does.
Or we get back to reality, people get back to reality. And yeah, I don't know where I want to go with that, but I think there's a lot of open possibilities when people begin to take those steps towards connection to the earth, to each other. There is a visceral reality that sets in.
Yeah. And it's easy for people to make that connection if they are willing to listen. And, there's just a lot of shouting, like, you're farming the wrong way, you're farming the wrong way. And I get it. I'm a big commercial farmer and I use herbicides and we fertilize and it's really demonized. But instead of pointing the finger at us, we are trying to improve every year and we are improving. But I don't know what's cool about it as a large farmer. I go on Substack and I see all these gardeners and all these people writing about farming and gardening from all corners of the world. And I'm learning as a farmer, I've learned more from those people than I ever imagined. Because like I said, I'm a large scale farmer. These are our fields. They're 160 to 300 acres. They're massive. I mean, I don't really know how to grow much on a small scale, to be honest with you. And I learn a lot of that here. And that's part of what Substack helps with. Like, there's just so many different approaches, so many different ways to do things. And I always talk about how farming is basically one big experiment. And that's how we grow from it, by learning from other people. We do what the neighbors do. We talk to each other. What worked for you? What worked for you? And then we all collaborate and we figure out the next step, and that doesn't have to be limited to big farms. It could be somebody growing a raised garden bed in their backyard. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the point is, I just hate seeing all this finger pointing when we should all just be learning from each other. But we could all be learning from each other. I don't want to tell you what you should do, but yeah.
What comes to mind for me when you talk about that is the erasure of farmers and the people growing our food. Because in the work I do, Adam, I live here in the suburbs and I farm my little quarter acre and some community garden plots. And then I work with a huge number of farmers. So I like to say, like, my crop is small farms. And I help them to grow, find the people that they're serving, and also sometimes to transition from conventional to organic.
Hmm.
And in that regard, one of the things that frustrates me, and I'll admit this is like my internal place that I need to work on, but it frustrates me when Americans in general, and I'm really generalizing here, will vilify a farm like you and then not put the support behind a farmer who's wanting to transition. And what that looks like is, in some cases, 100 families buying into a new farm model, like literally buying into it.
Yeah.
And I know that when I say things like that, it sounds virtually impossible for a lot of people. But then look at Disneyland, look at Disney World. They're doing great. Why is that? Because that's what people are supporting.
Yeah,
It's literally
for
what they're
sure.
supporting. And so we're going to get more of what we collectively support.
Right. Absolutely.
And what does it take? I mean, if 100 families can give up their vacation in order to transition a conventional farm to organics, and I mean, I see your gears turning. Think about, like, how many families would it take to support an operation like yours going from conventional to organics? And so I get frustrated in this narrative where like, lives get erased. Farmers' lives get erased. Like, we're so quick and easy to say farmers should be blah, 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 blah. But we're
Hmm.
not so quick and easy to say, and here's X amount per month. And when you grow your first broccoli, I get a part
Hmm. You're right. The gears are turning.
of it. So,
Uh,
somebody has this comment here. Neurodivergent Reflection says Grandpa had converted to organic for a while, but tenants on the land sprayed and he lost his certification. Organic gets to be so difficult, though. Yeah, organic does get to be difficult.
yeah, yeah. I haven't looked into it too much, but I know it's a very difficult transition. And this is hearsay. I've always heard that even organic farmers, they spray other stuff on there that's more damaging to the crop than the pesticides we use. I don't know. I don't have any evidence to back that up, but yeah, that
Yeah,
transition is, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's very seldom done successfully up here, at least in my area. Especially with just the weed pressure we have after 20 years of Roundup. If that goes away, we're in some trouble, and we don't have. If it was 50 years ago and there was 10 people working on every farm, yeah, then we'd stand a chance. But there's just no labor up here, and that would be a very labor intensive change. And then to be able to take the hit financially, because the yields would drop so much that I don't know how you would even stay in business for year one. But again, not saying it's impossible, but it's very, very challenging to do.
yeah.
Um, I would love to get there. I would love to be able to go up and put seed in the ground and not have to fertilize it. But the reality of it is it doesn't work that way.
Well, if you're looking at the same model, the same type of farming as you're doing right now, right, you
Yeah.
probably cannot we effectively weed hundreds of acres of wheat, right? But
Yeah.
if you look at a different model where, something a little bit more like Helen's, where you have the pigs coming in And then
Yep.
after the pigs, you have this rotation that is biomimicry. Do you know the biomimicry?
I don't know the term. No.
It's essentially looking at nature and seeing how nature does it and then doing
Oh,
our
yeah.
best to mimic that. So for
Sure.
example, a quick example of that is how the herds of bison used to just travel across the prairies of the US. And in that, they would completely graze down a whole area, leave
Mm-hmm.
behind manure. A couple days later, the birds came along and they would pick through that, spreading it around, leaving their own manure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's and then what some of the farmers do with rotational intensive grazing is mimicking that.
Yeah.
But you also get biomimicry in like architectural designs that look at how beehives do things, or people
Sure.
who are trying to figure out new ways to fly things and they look at the
Mm-hmm.
insects. It's all biomimicry. It just depends on how you apply it. And in
Yeah.
farming, we can look at it as the agricultural
Yeah.
piece of
I
it.
like that. I like that. And that's back to connection again. How all this, everything works together in nature. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah. I like that. But yeah, and there will be a huge place for that. I really believe that. There will always be a huge place for large commercial farming too, I think. Um, but if we make that shift, if people actually do start growing their own things and it catches on, that's going to take up some of the slack in our food system. There will be actually good food available. Like I live in a food desert where I get fruit that tastes like cardboard. I can't even get any, it doesn't even pay for me to buy fruit. I don't even think it has any nutrition and it definitely doesn't have any flavor. That's one thing I would like from it is just to have healthy options available. It's, I was talking to my dad this morning. He was talking about the price of food and how high it's become. And he's like, it's to the point where I just got to get the cheapest shit I can find, which is terrible because the cheapest shit is usually the most unhealthy, right? But I mean, that's what people resort to when you can't go out and buy a meal for one person for $20 anymore. It's insane.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's gotten overwhelming, but that also is a a, um, a good vote for foraging and letting some land go back to being wild, so to speak, right? And
I'm with you on
seeing,
that. There's a lot of land that shouldn't even be farmed. It should be. I mean, there's a reason the government paid people not to farm it back in the 70s and 80s with the CRP conservation program. That marginal ground should probably be just left to do what it does. But you get high crop prices, and then people see an economic opportunity, and they go, "Well, I can farm that. I can farm that." And there's been so much of that over the past 15 years that's what leads to this big glut in supply, low prices, and the economic depression we're in as farmers right now. Um, Lost my train of thought.
well, I've been reading a lot of things recently about the concept, for lack of a better term, feeding the world. I don't like that because I don't think
Yeah,
that's really a thing. But
yeah,
this idea that it's an idea that farmers have to be responsible for this, and that land in agriculture, uh, and I don't know exactly how to articulate this. So tell me what comes to mind for you. But one of the things that I keep thinking about is, and it goes back to this erasure of farmers things. It's like this idea that farmers are the weeds in our society, and
yeah.
that we've got this huge push for more data centers, for the infrastructure to get the energy from one place to another to power the data centers, for
Hmm.
solar farms. Uh, I don't like that term, but I think it's well understood. And, I'll go ahead and throw in there warehouses, fulfillment centers. Oh my goodness, the list goes on.
Yeah.
And how we look at that and we say, oh, farmers have to improve efficiency, increase yields because we don't have enough land to feed people. And I'm just scratching my head going, do we really, really need that Barbie factory?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
do we really need another data center? Or do we
Yeah.
actually need our farms?
Yeah. Or another fulfillment center to supply us with shit we don't need that we're probably buying on debt. Like, that's the stuff that I think people are sick of. They watch their parents do it, their grandparents do it for decades, and it's like people are just ready to say no more. And then part of it is I think people want to escape from that, and yeah, maybe that means growing your own garden. It doesn't mean moving to the mountains and becoming a hippie monk or anything like that, but I think it's a real possible thing. Like I said, once people see that it can be done, and if you can make a living off of a small plot of land just selling food at farmers markets or whatever it is, people will see that opportunity and they'll jump on it.
Or if it offsets food expenses.
That too. Yeah, yeah.
Like
Well,
you don't need to make a living doing it.
yeah,
You can
and
grow
that's the
enough to.
immediate yeah, that's the immediate benefit that you see right away. Absolutely. Yeah. But I really see things heading that way. This whole American dream that we've been fed, get a house, get 7 cars, get as much stuff as you can before you die, which makes no damn sense. You can't take any of it with you, but it's just this greedy mentality we've had for so long. I don't like to use the word greedy because it sounds condescending. I don't mean to be condescending, but it's a system that feels like it's just so ripe for disruption, and I think it's being disrupted as we speak. And I think it could be advanced further if we had a platform, if we if we weren't erased, like you say, if we weren't forgotten out here. Yeah.
Yeah, so Tim says part of the answer is to look at the corporate food system. They are pushing non-organic frankenfood. So real food isn't important to them, I think. And yeah, I mean,
Sure.
we can see that. Like you and I, we talk about the policy stuff, geek out on that sometimes, talk about the 1970s, the green revolution and the get
Yeah.
bigger, get out era. And
Yeah.
yes, I mean, that was completely corporate driven and driven by extractive practices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't even say they're pushing it on us. We're willingly buying this stuff. It's just that, like, nobody's force feeding it to us. It's just I mean, kind of forced on us because a lot of the Franken foods that we're talking about is usually the cheapest stuff. That's what most people can afford. And it's easy. You don't have to put a lot into it. Uh,
So, Adam, I might gently challenge you on that because
Please do.
I'm working on a really hard piece right now, and that's why it hasn't already come out. It's taking, and maybe this is why I'm feeling so much of the grief and the depression. Um, it's so heavy and it's hard, but it's a piece about the Trail of Tears.
Oh yeah.
And so when you look at our, when you look at the different facets of our history and what happened and really address the reality, and that's one of the things that I admire and love so much about you and your writing, is that you're like, no, don't look away just because it's hard. Don't look away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm making that same request in this piece, but yes, it was forced. There were people here who were cultivating and honoring the land and the cycles of the land and putting back into the land, not just extracting what they could from the land. And those people, 5 tribes in particular, were forcibly removed from their land in favor of extractive cotton farming. It
Yeah.
wasn't even food, it was cotton, right? And we talked a
Cotton.
little
Yeah.
bit about the history of the
Hmm.
cotton seeds, but but yes, it was forced and
For sure.
tragically.
Yeah.
And so it's happened like, and I guess that's where some of this fear stems from, is that I am afraid, and I'll use that word, that it's happening again.
Yeah. I I always like getting your perspective. You always make me think of things differently than I normally would. And I don't really have a rebuttal, but yeah, that's a great point you make. Like,
And maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe I'm going down an incorrect conclusion, and I'm open to that. But sitting with the facts, sitting with the truth, as you say, because these stories are true, and I don't mean truth is like this one ultimate thing that's right. I mean literally looking at the facts and listening to the stories.
yeah,
Sitting with that is hard. It's so hard.
yeah, yeah. It's hard to talk about those things. It's hard to write about them. It's even harder to publish stuff like that. But it's
It is.
real. It is, and I don't know. I've most of my life I've run from the hard things. Like taking the easy path. But the growth is in the more difficult fork in the road, and that's the one we need to take. Does that make sense? I'm kind of being vague about this.
It makes total sense.
But yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah,
Helen Keller has an amazing quote on that about character is built through adversity.
yeah,
I don't have it exactly, but yeah, I mean that's where the good stuff happens.
yeah. Absolutely. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all the garbage I've gone through. But once you learn to just be grateful for that and accept, hey, that was part of my path. I'm kind of getting out of the weeds here into some philosophy again, but that's usually where my writing goes to somehow. I talk about spring planting, and I end up writing a manifesto about, I don't know. It's, I don't know. It's fun talking about this stuff though. And it's fun to see I'm excited to see where it heads. And I get how easy it is to get depressed and sad, and the hopeless feeling that it brings about all this stuff. But I think it goes back to farming is such a stoic industry. There's so many things out of your hands that you can't change. And I think this is just another one of those things that we're all just along for the ride, and we're all speculating on where it can go. But I'm optimistic that it's heading
Well,
to a better place.
your optimism is a wonderful balance to my grief and depression and what I'm seeing.
And it's rare. Usually I'm the depressed one. I'm the one grieving for something normally. So it's kind of fun to be the positive one.
I think it's fair, especially like,
Yeah.
but I think it's also reflective of that duality that we can all hold at the same time, just within our own selves, is that duality. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of us are struggling with that right now.
Right. Because it's confusing and it makes you wonder what's real. It makes you question yourself. Like, is there something wrong with me? Because it's hard to hold two thoughts in your head at the same time, especially opposing thoughts. It's hard for a lot of people to do that. And I think it's confusing for people. Like, it's hard to know what's right, or what, I won't say right, but
It's hard to know what step to take next.
there you go. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and back to our topic of weeds versus crops. Well, which is the
Yes.
weed, which is the crop, right? And especially
Yeah.
like with some of these dualities we're holding, like a weed is just a plant someplace that you don't want it. Well,
Right. Right.
we're holding that duality of, okay, maybe it's fixing nitrogen, or maybe it's adding adding more organic matter to the soil. One, I'll go off on a quick little tangent, and this is like something that gives me hope too. But that whole thing about plants chemically communicating both with each other
Hmm.
and with the insects, and how if there's not like this just blew my mind when I first learned it, that if there's a soy field that does not, and the soil does not have enough organic matter in it, that plant will send off signals to insects, probably specific one. I don't have that in my memory, for them to come and eat and destroy that plant so it can die and add that organic matter to the soil. And I'm like, whoa, that
Yeah,
is so freaking cool. Right.
there's
And
so much
so,
to it. Oh, sorry. Go on.
no, go for it.
Oh, it's crazy you mentioned that. There's so many, just plant signaling. Plants talk, basically, they talk to the soil, they talk to the microbes in the soil. Like, this is a naturally occurring thing, and there's this symbiotic relationship between all of it. And I hadn't, prior to 2 years ago, when I started working with like biological products and especially Source was the big one, because that is a product that mimics that natural signal from plant to microbe, and it makes for a healthier plant. But that's when I really started learning about this. But yeah, it blows my mind too, just the how it's all connected. Like, the soil is truly alive. And you're right, by putting too much fertilizer on it, we're killing it. We really are. Like, there has to be balance. There's a responsible way to fertilize. It's not as simple as, I throw 500 pounds of nitrogen at it, I'm going to get my best crop. No, you screw a whole bunch of stuff up. You tie up um, calcium, maybe. Too much nitrogen will tie up, I think it's calcium, potassium. There has to be balance within the system. Otherwise, it just fries the soil. And that's what I feel like a lot of us have been doing for the past, I don't know how many years, but I'm trying to reverse that. Like, I'm finding things that show up on a soil test that show me that soil is getting healthier. And we have them and we're doing that. But it's like with Source, that technology is so new. It's like when auto steer came to tractors about 20 years ago. Auto steer is where you push a button, the tractor steers itself to the end, you turn it around, and basically all you do is sit there. And that came around 2002, right when I got out of high school. And the guy I was working for bought his first auto steer system. And his dad was probably 70 at the time. And he's like, what the hell do we need to spend money on that for? And a year went by, and that same old man that poo-pooed this idea was in the tractor. And guess what? The auto steer quit working. He called me, and I couldn't get it fixed. And he's like, hell with it. I'm going to shut it down and go home. So in 1 year, that guy adopted this new technology. But the point is, you have to see it happen, or you have to feel that, change or the benefit from that new tech. And it takes time. There's an adoption curve, and it's slow, and it's slower than any of us think, but eventually we change. But nobody is more reluctant to change than farmers, it seems like. But
Hmm.
we do eventually change. We get there. It's slow. I kind of bounced all over the place again there, but
I
made
mean,
a lot more sense in
it's
my head.
good. It's good. So Samantha says, I'm a weed for sure, a dandelion. I love that because dandelions are so resilient
They are.
and persistent and edible. Every
Yes.
part of them is edible. I think dandelions are, like, my personal opinion, never a weed. Never a weed, because they are a food source. Well, I take that back. I have pulled a few up out of my garden just because they were in the wrong place. So, yeah, the definition of a weed: a plant in the wrong place where you don't want it.
Yeah.
But dandelions are so wonderful, and I just I think I could, like, preach dandelions all the time, and that could be a full-time job. But I
So what do you
have
make?
convinced several people recently to leave their dandelions in place. So yay!
So what do you make with them? Soup? Or What do
What
you
do I
what do you
make with
make?
them? I mean,
You
I,
personally?
I admire them. I use the leaves sometimes, but not very often because they are so incredibly bitter. But the reason, okay, here's the thing. Like, I attended a lecture 15, 17 years ago, by a guy who survived. His whole family literally survived the Great Depression because they used every part of the dandelion, the roots, the leaves, the flowers, because they had no other, like, they had not enough other food sources. And
Wow.
so I think like the more we can cultivate dandelions, the more food resilient we'll be. They're also medicinal. And I don't personally
Hmm.
uh, make tinctures out of them. I'm not there right now in my life, but I will get there at some point. But I think making sure that they're still abundant and around us is a great idea.
What kind of medicinal value? Like, what is it? What ails does it cure or help? I'm curious.
Well,
I don't know anything about this. So
and I'm sure. Okay, so I want to give the caveat that I'm learning here.
yeah,
I'm not like in herbal medicine. I love it and I read about it all the time, but I'm not like at all expert in this arena at all. But dandelion leaves are a form of digestive bitters. They're like one of the many that we
oh,
can use for digestion.
okay,
Okay, so Samantha says sore muscles, bruises, topical skin conditions. So I guess that would
cool.
be if you boil it into a salve, Samantha. Um, but in terms of edibility, is that a word? They're
It
edible.
it it it, it is today.
Yeah. um, all the parts are edible. So
Okay, yeah,
you can make soup. You can dry the roots. Like I know some people dry the roots and make it into like a coffee like drink. So anyway,
really. Hmm.
all of that to say there are like there are no weeds, except there still are. Just when there's someplace we don't want them, but weeds versus crops, Adam.
Yeah, it's funny. Sherry just commented and said she loves weeds, and she does. She
Yes.
thinks they're so pretty. And here's me, like, we gotta kill those things, you know? There's totally different perspectives on it, and I see her side of it too. But we joke about that quite a bit. Yeah, it's crazy how much, yeah, something as simple as a dandelion like can offer that much of a benefit. Stuff that I've never thought about. All I've ever thought about is that thing has to die. You know, it's just wild how different the perspectives are.
Yes, and applying that to I think like I think it is one perspective that some corporate entities how they view farmers, especially small farmers, or how they view people like us, Adam, talking about this and talking about how farmers cannot be erased. We need
Yeah.
farmers, that we're the weeds in somebody else's field.
But we're a threat. We're a threat to the status quo that they want to keep because people are they've been making money off this a long time. That's nobody wants to experience reverse lifestyle creep, you know, going backwards, making less money. Nobody does, especially big corporations for sure. Um, yeah, it's sorry, I saw something in the field and lost my train of thought. Half the time I'm out looking at dirt, just
Well,
checking things out. But
I heard something one time, and I don't know if it's true, but the saying was that people who voluntarily give up standard of living experience a higher quality of life. And that
mhm.
word voluntarily, right? If you're forced to, if you lose everything, that does not lend oneself to a higher quality of life. But the idea
Right.
that we could have some of that, we could, if we choose to remove technology or remove things from our lives, we could then experience a higher quality of life. And isn't that what we're all seeking?
I think so.
We want that connection. We want those good feelings, whether they come from, they don't need to come from driving the Ferrari.
No. And
Those same
usually
good feelings.
that lasts about a week anyway, and then you're tired of it and you're off chasing the next damn thing, you know? Like um oh man, I had a good thought. I just lost it. Hmm.
Related to
Nope.
quality of life.
It's gone. Yeah, quality of life. Like yeah, it's oh, that's what it was about social media, just how it was supposed to connect us all, and it's done exactly the opposite. It's just pushed us all into this little hole that we all hang out in, and it had the opposite effect, and it's crazy. And I think the damage has already been done, but I think we're already going away from that. We're going back in the opposite direction again, back to real connection. At least that's where I see it going. And maybe it's just the optimistic side of me saying this, but I really think that's where we're going. And it excites me. At least on the days I'm not depressed about it. Which today
Yeah,
is fortunately one of those days.
good. Well, you've been a good counterbalance to uh, my anger, grief, and depression over the trash everywhere, and whatever that's a metaphor for, really. Like
Yeah.
how much that is encroaching on, I think, encroaching on everyone's quality of life. So
Yeah.
I'm
I
glad for
think
the
it is.
counterbalance.
Yeah. That works well. It's good. Someday I'll need the opposite. It'll be me all down in the dumps. Probably next Tuesday. Who knows?
Maybe. Well, you're at your
Yeah.
destination. Is this a good
I
stopping
am.
point?
Yeah. Yeah. I better, even though it's raining, I still got a boatload of things to do today. So
I know it never stops, ever.
never stops. No.
Never stops.
Yeah. But this
But
was great.
Adam, you are farming full
Adam
time
Kuzna,
on Substack.
farming full time on Substack. Check me out there. And you are?
I am Raw Milk Mama on Substack and Nourishing Liberty on Spotify. And this is the Nourishing Liberty podcast on my end. For Adam, it's your voice of farming full time. And I'll go ahead and just give some good words about Adam. Adam writes incredible stories about being on the front lines of farming in America and with beautiful photos from his partner, Sherry. So check out some of those articles. They're poignant and wonderful writing, just really wonderful writing.
Thank you. I
And this is
always,
from like a
always
literary,
appreciate that.
so it's really good stuff. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And also, Adam nicknamed me the food policy bulldog, which I absolutely love. So thank you
You
for
are?
doing that because I'm such a geek about it, about food policy here in America.
Well, we
So
need that too.
I
I've,
love writing about it. Come and read some
yeah.
of the boring history of how we got to where we are today. It's not boring, by the way. Not
It's
boring.
not boring. No,
Yeah.
it's great stuff. I've learned a lot from you too. It's been this whole experience. I've learned so much. I met so many great people, especially with this egg category push that we're doing on Substack. It's been fantastic. It gives me, maybe that's kind of the source of my optimism and my hope. It's partially that, just seeing how many people out there actually give a shit about this. It blows me away every day. It
Agriculture
really does.
matters.
It does. It matters.
Yes, it does. And those of
Yeah.
us working in ag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. That's a great place to end.
All right, Adam. Thanks to everyone for tuning in
Yeah.
and come back next week. We'll be
Yeah.
here.
Alrighty. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Bye bye.